This week on Inevitable,
Friar Tuck joins the team,
Chris Boucher writes the death count into the show,
and we learn the military value of roller skates.
Hello, I'm Dylan.
And I'm Keon.
And this is Inevitable, a podcast where the United States actually successfully keeps secrets from the general public, because this week we watched Conversations with the Dead.
Written by Chris Boucher.
Directed by Christopher Baker.
And aired on July 13th, 1987.
Episode 2. We've already successfully watched 2 episodes of Star Cops.
Yeah.
Pat myself on the back. We're almost an eighth of the way through the show. Or a quarter, sorry.
Well, we're 2/9 of the way through. It's short enough that we can just be like, we're 2/9.
We're 0.22222 of the way through. Repeating ad infinitum.
Yeah, and a lot of people, like this episode a lot more than the first one.
Yes, I looked at the IMDb ratings for the all 10 people on IMDb voting on Star Cops episodes, and this one is like substantially better rated, like a whole point better rated, and you know what? I agree. It's like way better. I like this way better than the first episode.
Well, I didn't. When I first watched the first 3 episodes of Star Cops, I liked the first episode a lot more than this one. Now I just like it a little more than this one. This episode has grown on me, I guess, in my second rewatch. But before we kind of jump in, behind the scenes stuff, I didn't really find much. All I found was the Anorak Zone website has some transcript from the DVD commentary with Trevor Cooper, who plays Davis, saying that, basically that this show was a mess behind the scenes, and that a lot of stuff felt like it was being made up as they went along, which, like all shows, to an extent, are made up as they go along, but yeah, maybe just not enough
maybe
was
this
planned
one
out.
was worse.
Yeah. So kind of stuff we already knew, just reconfirmed by Trevor Cooper, I guess.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah.
Chris Boucher is back writing this episode, and as with the rest of the first half of the show, Christopher Baker directs.
Right.
This is about as Chris Boucher a story as you can get.
Yes.
If Chris Boucher has a trademark, like this is his trade, like all these things are his trademark.
Yeah, well, I think this episode is just brilliant. The way it all comes together at the end.
I do love that ending scene when the music kicks in and like you start realizing what's actually going on. It's great. There's some low points, like the roller skater.
Okay, that was hilarious.
I know it was, but it was still a low point.
That was hilarious. And because it was hilarious, I'm giving it a pass.
Also, ballsy move to just kill off Lee. Which, let's just jump right into this, because that happens almost right at the beginning.
Well, the episode starts with this random freighter ship flying through space. I just want to say, I was extremely confused already, because the description on the platform I watched this on... spoiled. Spoiled that Lee dies. So this starts off with this freighter ship, and I'm like, wait a minute, how is this all going to come together?
Well, now that you bring that up, that's actually something I disliked about this episode, is that there's sort of 2 running plot threads, and they don't come together.
I think they come together in as much of a way as they need to.
They come together for Nathan, but they don't really come together in any other way.
The main characters, so...
I felt that there were kind of 2 things going on in the first episode as well, but I felt they were blended more together, which I enjoyed more.
Perhaps.
Especially because, I don't know, it just feels like Patton is kind of just left out to dry. Once they realize it's him, like, all right, I get it. What are you going to do? Like, you're investigating and you figured it out. So, like, what else is there to do? But at the same time, it just feels like that's sort of just hung up once they figure it out. But we'll get there, I guess. So, yeah, there's this freighter and it's gone rogue. We find that out from Theroux.
Except not intentionally rogue. They're like, it's a machine fault.
Right. And it's just sort of flying off into space.
And this is what already sold me on the episode, because this like flying through space shot was like eerily or perhaps like intentionally very similar to these cutscenes from a video game I played. And obviously when I'm saying intentionally similar, I'm referring to the reverse direction.
Yeah.
Just for clarification's sake. called Freelancer, which is actually my favorite game of all time.
Never heard of it.
It's like an early open world space game where you can fly around and just do stuff, but all the cutscenes are like very, very similar to this like shot of the spaceship flying. It moves very similar. It like flies past the camera, so it's like coming towards the camera and then it's going away from the camera. The overlaid like vocals, we not actually seeing the cockpit or the people in the spaceship, like just hearing the overlaid vocals. Very reminiscent. Very similar. I was like, all right, I'm sold. I'm in.
Well, those are all like budget saving techniques of like just having the voiceovers and stuff, whether you're talking about a show or like a video game with cutscenes.
But I think it looks awesome.
Yeah, it looked really cool. Again, like I'm still not seeing the supposed low budget. Well, I'm seeing the low budget nature of the show, but it looks cool. Like I don't see people always, or from what I've heard, people say Star Cops kind of looks lame most of the time. I mean, granted, we're only 2 episodes in, but I don't think so. I think it looks fine, if not good.
I think it looks great.
Yeah, I would say great.
There is enough. The damn non-people items, like the people moving through space, because we see Nathan and Theroux now, in the Star Cops headquarters, where they're hearing about this ship going rogue,
right?
And it looks really good that they're floating around almost in zero-G. Nathan's like waking up from bed, and then they get to like the main HQ, and there's like just like a I don't know what it is, like a juice pack or something.
It's like a bag of Cheetos.
It looks like a bag of Cheetos, but I assume it was like a juice pack, quote, floating, unquote. And again, with the non-human items being the items that are like very obviously held up by fishing wire. But you know what? Again, I didn't really care.
It's better than the reverse of like, man, that bag of Cheetos looks amazing. But the people are like just suspended by wires.
Like watching pre-production for movies where they haven't removed the safety wires yet.
Or like watching any behind the scenes on like 300 where it's literally just the people and it's all just green screen and like they're yeah.
That's
anyway,
like with a lot of comic book movies nowadays too.
Yeah, there's a lot of green screen and there's a lot of like motion capture, like CGI extra add-ons these days.
Good old mocap.
So Nathan is sick. Box thinks it might have something to do with the gravity, so he recommends going somewhere with higher gravity, namely Earth.
Literally anywhere with gravity. So I guess Nathan makes an executive decision to move Star Cops HQ to the moon as well, which is a budget-saving technique by Chris Boucher here, you brilliant madman.
Which is also, good for their investigation because they need to investigate the Daedalus, which is the ship that is flying off into the middle of nowhere.
Right. And it launched from the moon.
Right.
At least that's what I got out of the episode. I don't know if that was actually explicitly said anywhere.
I think it did. Theroux actually has a very confusing line in this scene where he's like, yeah, all the passengers are dead. And Nathan's like, oh. He's like, well, they're not technically dead. They're just on limited life support.
Yeah, no, Nathan asks Theroux, like, who's doing these investigations? And my response was like, shouldn't it be you? Like, isn't that literally your job description to be doing this?
Well, I was going to bring this up later, but I'll just talk about it now. Like, are Nathan and David the only Star Cops?
That's what I kind of got out of this episode, is that they were the only two, like, Star Cops in existence, and then there's, like, no more.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, the Star Cops are, like, totally disrespected and undervalued no matter where they go, like on the moon, on Earth, basically everywhere in the episode. They're just, like, basically spit on.
Throwback to last episode when we found out that they were part-time employees, and it's like, wait a minute, how much money are they making for this? Apparently enough to, like, grill the moon base team. Although that was all Theroux was really doing. Or Theroux, sorry. But yeah, meanwhile, Lee is back on Earth. But not for long. Her spirit ascends before long. Reach across the stars. My question here, does Lee live in a warehouse? Looks like she lives in a warehouse.
This is Nathan's apartment.
Looks like Nathan lives in a warehouse then.
Maybe this is like part of the semi-dystopian sort of themes going on. It's not
was
really
this a BBC
dystopian,
production or an ITV production? That was the one thing we didn't
It was BBC.
mention last week.
No, we did. We mentioned
I didn't.
BBC.
Was BBC also saying maybe this is the BBC prop warehouse?
It looks like a cool apartment. It's like a multi-tiered thing.
Except for that random pole that's like inconveniently in the middle of the apartment. I'm like, damn, gotta design the space around that pole.
Yeah. So Lee's there, and there's a message for her. She thinks it's for Nathan, so she doesn't pick it up at first, but eventually...
But then it's revealed that it's from Nathan, and she's like, oh, wait, what?
Yeah, so she listens to it, and it says, your life is in danger. Remain where you are. Under no circumstances must you leave. Lock off the entry lift, and then all the lights go out.
Yeah, she didn't actually listen to it. It just displays itself on the screen, and she doesn't read it at all. Because then the guy comes in, he's like, why aren't you reading the message? Why aren't you sitting at the chair reading the message? And then he kills her.
Well, then we cut to, like, Divis going, so Lee's dead. We don't actually see the murder.
Not one for subtlety, this Divis.
I like Divis already. But according to Trevor Cooper, who played Divis, his character wasn't fully nailed down at the time that this was.
Yeah, Divis is a bit of a dick and also a terrible investigator.
Yeah,
because he says something like this was obviously just like a break-in or something. It's pretty obvious, and Nathan's like, wait, why is it obvious? And then he's all, because that's what the computer said. And I'm like, wait a minute.
Yeah, so Nathan isn't going along with this. Nathan's idea at this point, I believe, is that the message was intended to keep her at the console so that the killer could break in and kill her. And Nathan obviously knows that he didn't send the message himself. But it was credited to his account or whatever under Unicom, the secure communications link. And did you notice that Unicom charges per message? Because they charge the message to Nathan's account. Gotta wonder how Unicom is making money when they're charging per message.
Maybe everyone charges per message. I found it weird how they invented, I assume Unicom's not a real telecommunications company. I didn't look it up, but not 5 minutes from now, David will refer to the spaceship that went rogue as a, quote, standard General Electric's freighter, unquote. I'm like, so I guess GE just survived this dystopian future.
Well, I don't think Star Cops is fully dystopian. It's just a future that's pretty bleak, or that's kind of realistically, dark.
Still, though, I guess GE survived into this future. But I guess Vodacom didn't.
Well, according to some random site I found on the internet, this is all taking place in 2027, so it's not that far in the future from now or when. I
really thought you were going to say GE paid to have their name used in this TV show. I was like, God damn! How much did they pay? $5
to be used as on a ship that malfunctioned and well, not really, but that's what they think for now.
But yeah, David calls Nathan and he's like, it was just a standard GE freighter. We says General Electrics, but in case you didn't know that GE stands for General Electrics, now you know.
Yeah. And Nathan is like, all right, Theroux, you need to grill everyone on Moonbase and get as much information as you can about the Daedalus.
Yeah, because he's like, I'm pretty sure this is where he implies or states that the Daedalus launched from the moon. Because it kind of seems like it was traveling, or it was a preparatory mission for a manned mission to Mars, based on
some of the dialogue. Yeah.
The dialogue from, I wrote his name, Patton.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, so kind of just wrapping up this scene where Nathan meets Divis and also...
Divis.
Yeah, Divis. What did I say?
Adidas.
Oh, Divis.
Like Adidas, I guess.
Or like the Daedalus or something. We also meet... Hold on, I wrote her name down. O'Corman, who is sort of the second in command or whatever. She had a title, but I forgot what it was. She's investigating...
assistant inspector or something.
Yeah, she's investigating alongside Divis, and she's...
a way better inspector, but then you find out it's because she... Never mind, that's a spoiler. Spoiler.
Well, Nathan actually, I think his characterization and just his entire character in general is sort of better or more main character-like in this episode, because he definitely shows a lot more emotion. Like Box, I forget what Box says. I wrote this down
Good old
as well.
Box.
Box says Box thinks that the info that Lee is dead is meaningless for some reason. He has some reason why he thinks that, but it's obviously not meaningless to Nathan, because we see Nathan is very well, first he's taking it out on Divis. First he's angry about it, but then once they all leave, he's sort of crying to himself and sort of looking off out the window. We find out some more info here. We also find out that Nathan and Lee knew each other for 10 years. Mm-hmm. And I think what would have been nice in this episode is if we got something like to reinforce that they were about to like start a family and settle down or whatever, and then that all got ruined by Nathan joining the Star Cops, which then led to Lee's death. Because that's all very dependent on having watched the first episode, and it's kind of a throwaway line even in the first one.
We even do get a flashback to Lee from the previous episode because Nathan goes to the restaurant from the previous episode, the bad Chinese restaurant.
Yeah.
And we get a flashback to Lee saying like, oh, this restaurant sucks and I hate it and I've always hated it and you know that, don't you? Anyway, then the second in command shows up and she's like, this was a frequent location for you and me. And I'm like, wow, Nathan, you dense fool. And then Nathan's like, yep, Lee hated it here. And I'm like, wow, so you knew all along.
Vox told him.
Anyway, he's drinking like what's probably water, but I think is implied to be like vodka or tequila or some heavy liquor. Just getting drunk in this bad Chinese restaurant.
Sure.
And the lady's like, there's no recognizable motive for this killing. Just like last week, now that I think about it. Pretty sure Nathan received the exact same news in the exact same seat in the last episode.
But it's probably true this time. I mean, no.
It's not, though.
Yeah, so Nathan is obviously a suspect in all of this. Because he was like the closest person to Lee.
Well, only to Divas.
Yeah. And it seems like, based on Corman's supposed investigation in this scene, seems like he's a suspect to her as well. Meanwhile, on the moon, Theroux has met a couple people who work there, like Fox and Patton. I guess the qualification you need to work on Moonbase is to be like a total dick.
Well, I made a note of this, he's in like the space filing cabinet room where I guess they still use like actual paper on the moon.
It's 2027. Like, you think by 2027 everyone's going to be digital? Hell no.
I guess not, but what space agency is funding all the like weight of sending the paper to the moon, right? Like, just think about it from a cost benefit standpoint. Why wouldn't you just send them with like an iPad or some tablet of some sort to write all the notes on instead of like literally sending pounds and pounds of paper?
You'd be surprised how traditional many companies still are. Like, they will not move. Even like it would take more than like shipping all this stuff to the moon for them to move away from like filing cabinets.
I mean, I get that, but I'm saying like the cost of shipping the pounds and pounds of paper to the moon is going to be like economically practically unfeasible, at least like until the moon base is set up.
Yeah, and apparently they're traditional enough to do that. And they're
maybe that's why this is such a grim future, because they spent all their damn money shipping paper to the moon.
The moon base also looks very like not well, unless it's partially like underground somehow, but like that we get one shot of it, I believe, and it looks very small. But we do see like the epic like moon rover thing that's going to come back next week in a greater capacity.
Oh, hell yeah. I just like David's Michigan Wolverines t-shirt.
Yeah. I thought that was like a WNBA team, so I looked it up, but it was actually college.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Would have been pretty wild if it was a WNBA team.
Yeah. That's why I was like, what the heck? Like, really? Like, nobody cares about the WNBA. Really weird to like make Theroux a fan. So Theroux is talking to some of the people who work at Moonbase. They're like, yeah, Daedalus never going to be investigated. And Theroux's like, why? Like, I'm investigating it. And they're like, yeah, never going to be investigated. Good luck, man.
Yeah, he's talking with Fox, and Fox talks about how he thinks people are a design failure, and specifically the crew of the Daedalus, because they were like lovers.
Right.
And it was like they're going to distract each other. Like, we all knew that was a possible design flaw right there. This is also when David like casually mentions that there's never been a star cop from the moon for the first time, and this is one of those brilliant things I think Chris Boucher did in this episode, because it ties back in later. And if you like don't catch this line, you think it comes out of nowhere. But when he's talking with Fox has some like witty line about how he's like his IQ was too high to join the star cops or anything, and David fires back with, well, yeah, nobody from the moon's ever been a star cop, so you're not really special there, or something like that. And it's like, if you don't get this line, then you think it's just like pulled out of nowhere at the end of the episode. But if you do catch it, you're like, oh man, it all ties together. It all makes sense.
Yeah, I didn't catch it. I thought it was just out of nowhere.
Yeah, I saw it because I saw that in your notes. You thought it was out of nowhere. But there's a line here where David actually mentions it. Like, there's never been a star cop on the moon.
Right. And
there's actually, like, in the background of the whole episode, every so often you hear these news snippets about, like, the Americans are having trouble because everybody's like, why do you have the space station in orbit that you're not telling us what's on it? And the Americans are like, we're not telling you because it's secret.
Yeah, that's actually, since the beginning of the episode, actually, we've been hearing sort of news about this American ship that is totally secretive, but people think it's like a military satellite and they're protesting it, but the government isn't listening to protests. Guess things haven't changed.
Politically charged statement. A more politically charged statement would have been, I guess they predicted the future correctly in 1980, whatever, 87.
Well, when has the government ever listened to, like, protests?
When the protest overthrows the government, hashtag French Revolution.
But they came back.
I guess, but then the protests just became the government, and then there were, like, other protests, so...
The French and American Revolution actually, like, changed what the word revolution means, because now it just means, like, overthrow or whatever, but, like, when that word this is probably only interesting to me, but, like, when that word first started being used, it was with the Glorious Revolution with Oliver Cromwell, and the reason why...
the English Revolution.
Yeah, and the reason why it was a revolution is because they came back. Like, it revolved, right? It's not just like a 180, it was a 360, like the royalty came back.
Yeah, it's a 180 now,
Yeah, now it's a 180. But meanwhile, Nathan is back at home, and the same thing that happened to Lee happens to him, and he sees the words, Lee Jones has been dealt with, you're next.
Yeah, but he has Box trace the message this time.
Right.
Because he's quick enough to get Box on it.
Yeah.
And the door opens and no one's there, and Nathan's like, what the heck? And then he gets an audio message from someone who's like, I know who killed Lee. Meet me in the sketchy park in the dead of night. But bring no one. Come alone. I'm like, okay, that's not suspicious. This is a trap, right? This has to be a trap. And Nathan's just, I guess Nathan's too drunk to think of that because he just
But
goes.
it's okay because he's packing heat.
Okay. We're going to talk about those guns in a second.
Star Cops predicting the solution to gun violence in 1987. It turns out all we need is roller skates. Roller skates are the answer. When did this actually got me thinking? Obviously Nathan is a cop, but on Earth he's not a cop. I mean, Divas even is like, you're a cop up in space, but on Earth you're just a regular person. So, like, is he allowed to have this gun on Earth? He's
does
in
his
England.
jurisdiction extend to Earth? Who knows?
I find it actually kind of fun to imagine that he's, like, not allowed to have this thing, but he just keeps it anyway. Then again, like, when did Britain give up guns? Like, I know it was legal at some point to own guns in Britain, but I don't know when they had to give them all up.
I genuinely don't know.
It'll be in the show notes. So he goes to the park, and he's just kind of waiting there, and there's this roller skater skates by, and they just, like, kind of nod at each other and, like, sup. Like,
and then he comes back and tries to stab Nathan. And then Nathan beats him up.
He tries firing on the guy, but it turns out roller skates are superior to guns.
Well, the second in command lady, what was her name?
Corman.
Corman starts firing on him too, and I was like, damn, those guns have some pretty big explosions because they're like blowing up in their hands.
Yeah. Well, okay, so maybe I misinterpreted this scene, but didn't some guy like jump out of the bushes and try to stab the skater?
Yeah. Yeah, that too. And then that guy gets killed, I think, by Nathan, like accidentally or something. No, actually, no, not by Nathan, because of Nathan's written into the episode death count at the end of the story.
Yeah,
I think
he gets killed by Corman.
He gets killed by Corman.
He jumps out and he's like, I killed Lee, and Corman shoots him. So the skater isn't actually the guy who killed Lee. This is like such a wild scene.
Corman implies at the end of the episode that the guy who jumped out of the bush was like part of this spy trio or a group who like went rogue or something.
Yeah. This is such an insane scene.
And the guns are massive too. They look like they were 3D printed. I don't know if you've ever seen 3D printed guns, but they're like huge because they're made of plastic. They fire plastic projectiles. They're very far from the sleek design of the Liberator guns. These things still use physical projectiles too.
Wow, stuck in the past. 2027, still using bullets.
Where's my rail gun?
So I just want to put a pin on this again of like just how crazy a scene this is. Like I can't say it enough.
Yeah, but it was awesome. It's like pitch black at night. This rollerblading dude's trying to stab Nathan, and he's trying to get stabbed, and the guy trying to stab him gets killed, and then Nathan's trying to kill the roller skater. Like, damn.
This isn't, by the way, design-wise, this isn't like a, your typical like 2010s like roller skater who's like wearing, skin tight, whatever roller skating outfit. This is like a late 80s, early 90s skater who's like, he's wearing like neon, like he's got like bell-bottom pants.
Very baggy tracksuit on. I think I'm pretty sure he has a sweatband on too.
Oh, God.
And then Nathan's like, who are you shooting at, Corman? She's like, I was shooting at the roller skater. He's like, you were probably actually shooting at me because I'm between you and the roller skater. And she's like, oh, oops.
Well, based on what we find out later, like, was she really shooting at Nathan? She needs at least Nathan and or Theroux.
Well, I think Nathan's just pointing out, like, I'm standing between you and the roller skater. Like, why did you think that was a good idea?
Duck!
You say it as you pull the trigger so they have no time to actually react. Anyway, back on Moonbase, David's still investigating. He calls
in Patton.
Right. And he interrogates Patton. He's like, oh, well, Patton actually says, like, I've come up with a solution at the 11th hour, so to speak. We could save their lives, possibly. And David's like, well, what are you talking about? And he's like, my cryo research is on that ship. They might be able to freeze themselves and survive for the 5 years it would take the ship to get back. Because they have no propulsion system.
Right.
But David, we find out here, actually, that David used to be a...
Yeah, I wrote this down. He had some title. It was something important. He was...
I'm glad you wrote it down, because I forgot to write it down.
Give me a second. I'll find this.
Well, while Keon's looking it up, he suggests to vent the air from the ship to change its course, because if they're in cryosleep, they don't need to breathe the air, so they can vent the air.
Right. He was a flight engineer with NASA. Yeah. Well, we don't actually get that he was with NASA in this episode, but they say that he was with the American space program in episode 1, so I'm guessing.
Maybe it changed names. Maybe it's like...
The American Space Program is like the official name.
Maybe in this timeline, Star Cops, I don't know if I can even say this without causing an uproar, is like the future evolved version of Trump's space police proposal.
What was it the Space Force or something?
Yeah, the Space Force. And in this timeline, Trump was elected president. He actually successfully formed the Space Force. And then by 2027, it breaks off into an independent agency.
Yeah, hey, maybe he's on his like 4th term in this timeline.
Well, maybe that's why the world is so bleak.
I take it back. This is a dystopia. So yeah, they have this idea of like using the air from the airlock. They never use this. It doesn't get that far.
I think it's kind of implied that they used this, but I don't think they actually like show it or tell us that they do. Nathan seems to imply that they're going to do this at the end of the episode.
When Nathan gets back to the moon...
Because he gives up on investigating Lee's murder because Devis is like, get the hell out of here and impugning my investigation.
Well, Devis at some point tells him that, like, yeah, the investigation is over.
Oh, yeah, because Nathan goes back home and Devis is there and they, like, have some angry banter and then Nathan's, like, really angry yells, do you want to drink, Devis? And Devis is like, well, actually, yes.
Yeah, so this is, like, the start of their friendship. I really like how this is done, actually. Bravo, Boucher.
I guess that's a thing we do now, bravo.
So yeah, back on the moon, they think Patton is really sketchy. So they call him in, they're like, yeah, so your cryogenics research was on the ship. Did you have anything to do with this?
They don't even do that. Nathan just basically goes full in on this like theory. He's like, you did it. You planned this accident so that you could test your cryoengineering because you weren't granted a testing permit by the U.S. government. So now you made up this fault to do this. And Patton basically just admits to this, even though he also correctly surmises that Nathan and David have literally no evidence for any of this.
Well, the minute you say, like, yeah, you don't have any evidence, like, you're basically, like, for the most part, admitting your guilt as like, not right as it is to say that, like, He goes in and he gets really scared too. He's like, "You don't have anything to prove this."
Yeah, but he basically also admits that he did it because he's like, "How would you do that? Like, how would you know?" And they're just like, "We didn't actually." He's got to take a shot in the dark.
You got me, guys.
You jokers, you got me.
But then something that I kind of dislike from this episode is that this kind of just ends here. Like Patton just walks off. You can imagine that he's arrested in some way later on. But
No, I love this because actually Nathan's like, you're actually right. We don't have enough evidence to arrest you yet, but once that ship gets back, we'll be able to arrest you. And that's why he's like, so make sure if you're planning to go anywhere for the next 5 years, you're going to tell us, because once that ship gets back, we're going to have all the evidence we need, basically. I thought that was great. Because I thought it was like an inversion, because the typical expected ending, yeah, they got him, they arrest him, they put him away. But instead it totally subverts your expectations, and Nathan's like, yeah, you know what? We don't have enough evidence yet. But once that ship gets back, you're going down, basically.
Guess so. Kind of left a bad taste in my mouth.
I thought it was great. I actually really liked it. Although I can understand why you would dislike it.
Yeah, I think another reason I dislike it is because it doesn't really tie into the other main plot line of this episode, which is Lee's murder. I thought it would somehow, but it just doesn't, which I guess makes sense. I mean, if you think back to Blake 7, most Blake 7 episodes had sort of two things going on, and a lot of the times they were not all that connected.
I mean, it's a reason for them to move Star Cops HQ to the moon base.
Guess so. They are connected for Nathan. I'll say that. That's the connection between them, is that they're connected for Nathan.
Nathan is kind of the main character so far.
He is, definitely. I mean, the only other one you could argue is Theroux, and not even. Not even. But this actually, I guess these two threads are connected in the sense that this gets Nathan back into space, because now they go back to Star Cops HQ, which I think we didn't mention.
The old one.
Yeah, they're on a satellite, I guess, called the
Charles de Gaulle.
Yeah, Charles de Gaulle.
Which is a different name than it had last episode.
I think it's a different satellite.
Not
or
really
maybe
clear.
They renamed it. I don't know.
It's not really clear, but mine was I guess it's named the Charles de Gaulle now. I guess France had a heavy hand in building this thing.
Anyway, Corman is there for some reason.
She's like, I just really wanted to find you, Nathan. He's like, wow, okay, stalker levels 3,000. Here we go.
Well, she tells him she has some more info about the case, which is that she thinks the killer is a former Star Cop who was not rejected, but ejected from the program for some reason, and wanted to get revenge by basically taking out his anger on Nathan, because Nathan was very quickly admitted to the Star Cops.
And the guy's apparently on Star Cop base right now, and I'm like, wow. Security on the Charles de Gaulle is 100%.
Well, I think this is where you're meant to start suspecting Corman, because her explanation here. Theroux gives the info that he reminds Nathan there were no moon-based Star Cops. Also, her explanation of he's right here, right now, stealing a ship. Let's go after him is really sketchy.
Yeah, that's why her story starts to fall apart, because she mentions that this quote ejected Star Cop unquote came from the moon base, which is where her story falls apart, because. That's when David's like, wait a minute, there were no Star Cops from the moon. But he only tells Nathan that, and Nathan's like, I see.
Yeah. So they start chasing after the killer who's headed for the American station.
Right. The one that we've been hearing all about this whole episode.
Right.
And Nathan's like, we got to catch up to him. And they're going to do all these risky flight maneuvers, and Corman's like, no, we gotta land on the base. We gotta wait for him to land and then land on the base and arrest him. Nathan's like, yeah, I figured it out. You guys just want to get on the base. And then we see the ship just blow up, and she's like, why would you do that? He was my partner. And Nathan's like, yeah, I told the Americans he was on his way, and to blow him up on authority of Star Cops, basically.
Right. So their plan was to get on the base and have the Star Cops remove him from the base, because the Star Cops are basically the only people capable of going in and out, going into the base for a good reason and being able to come back out for a good reason and not get their heads blown off by the Americans.
Right. But instead, Nathan just buggers that up for them. And then he's like, I should just kill you right now, Corman, because I've killed 3 people now. Right. What's one more? but I won't because I have principles. And then David has the most awesome line in the whole episode where he just goes, you could order me to do it. I don't have any principles.
And this is actually played very well, I think, because Nathan is like having this violent outburst, but Theroux is totally calm when he says what he says.
Yeah. And he holds Nathan back. He's like, Nathan, no. But then he's like, but you could order me to do it. I'm like, oh, yeah, David. I think David's my favorite character.
We're finding out more about David's past slowly, and I'm wondering if like it's a lot darker than we think.
I feel like it might be. But he's still my favorite character, so I'm excited to learn more.
Yeah, I always like the edgelord characters. I think David
What,
is...
like Gan?
Gan wasn't an edgelord. Avon.
Yeah, he was.
No, Avon
yeah, he
was.
I think I'm beginning to enjoy
yeah,
this.
You're right. He was. He was.
Gan was like proto-edgelord.
Yeah, like these characters are like edgelords before edgelords were an archetype.
They basically defined the edgelord archetype. Anyway, Nathan goes to visit Lee's grave in like the middle of the night, and Divas is
The
there.
skater's there.
Divas is there.
There's
and
another skater.
Divas is like, you always visit the cemetery in the middle of the night? Nathan's like, yeah.
And Divas is out of a job, kind of like Nathan was.
Yeah, Divas is out of a job because like his second in command was a spy who infiltrated from like the British secret agency, and he like didn't notice, and he was also kind of a terrible investigator, so they fired him. But also, I think he also said like he quit or something. He's bringing suit against.
You can't fire me. I quit.
He's bringing suit against the like British Secret Service or whatever.
I wonder how that's gonna work out for him.
And he's like, I was thinking of asking you for a job, and Nathan just like doesn't answer this.
He says something, doesn't he? He does have some sort of reply.
He has a line, but it's like completely unrelated to the question.
But Divas does become a star cop. He's a character for the rest of the show.
Amazingly. I was like, Divas is the guy they chose to be a star cop. Divas, the bumbling inspector. I guess they need comic relief.
Based on what I've read, his character is pretty different from episode 3 to episode 9. So literally the rest of the show.
Great.
But we'll see. We'll see. I've watched episode 3, but I don't remember him being a main character in that one for some reason. Then again, I barely remember episode 3. But then it ends. Then we get that glorious outro sequence
that I immediately turned off. Actually, I didn't, because I was writing down some quotes, and then I was like, all right, I'm out.
So did you have anything to like kind of touch on at the end here?
The only thing I really wanted to touch on was like how brilliantly I think this whole episode just comes together. Just how all these like snippets and breadcrumbs were left throughout the episode, then like all got tied in at the end. Like hearing the news TV screens in the background talking about the American space station, and at first you're just like, oh, that's just like background noise, you know, typically just background news station you don't have to listen to. David saying something like, there were, you know, when he's talking with Fox, like there were no star cops from the moon base because you guys all hate us or whatever. And then just the way that like all of those come together at the end, like none of it, like there wasn't any like wasted time in this episode, I think.
Yeah, you know, the more we kind of talk about this, the more I see that. I agree. Like, yeah, this episode is, I think, kind of growing on me discussing it, and I really like all the different threads that kind of came together. And I guess that is how they solve the crime. Like, what am I saying? They're not connected. Like, Theroux learns that there were no star cops from Moonbase, and that's how they freaking solve the Lee's murder.
Yeah. So it's connected for David too.
What was I talking about? I was like, yeah, these don't really come together. Like, they're just two separate things.
But they do in the end come together.
Yeah, they totally do. Yeah. Yeah, the more I think about it, the more I might think that this one is actually better than the first. And one thing I think that is just totally better than the first episode is Nathan's character. He's a lot more... Yes. He shows a lot more emotion in this episode. I don't know. He just seems more, you know, like a character, or like a person, like a more character with emotion. Out. Right, yeah. I think that's because of Lee's death. I mean, obviously it affected him. I do think that, like, if there were an episode between... If this was episode 3, I think some of this would have worked better, like his outburst at the end of like, this job is making me like kill people and become like a terrible person, or like his emotion at Lee's death, because we don't really even know Lee.
Yeah.
So I think this might have worked better maybe as episode 3.
Maybe, but I can also kind of see where it's like playing up the fact that Nathan didn't even want to take this job in the last episode. In this episode, he's like, look at this. Look, this is like the reason why I didn't want to take this job is because it's making me kill people.
Yeah. Yeah, I see that.
One thing I'm noticing about the show is that I tend to like these episodes like more as we talk about it, and that happened to me last week as well. And I think that's because it's just like so much to unpack in these episodes, because it's Chris Boucher basically just having almost total creative control, and he's just like packing it in there.
Yeah, he was always a writer to pack in, as much as he could in the time allotted.
And that was like on Blake 7 and Doctor Who. Like the Chris Boucher episodes were the ones where there was like so much to unpack I feel like when we watched them, it was just so much to unpack that it was like almost more enjoyable retroactively, like unpacking these things and trying to like piece them together in a not necessarily slower, but more time-friendly manner, I guess.
Yeah, or like when you're watching the episode, unless you like pause every 5 minutes to kind of think, like it's just pushing you along, and you sometimes don't have time to like put all the pieces together.
Right.
Because like this one is actually crafting like a pretty cool mystery, but while you're watching it, maybe like, and this is like, I would say this is like my fault of like I didn't really get it.
I mean, but again though, it's because it's like just pushing you along, so it's really difficult to. It's not something like you're watching Midsummer Murders and it's like plodding along for 2 hours and the murder's like very clearly laid out and you're following everything. This is like pushing you forward and you got to fill in some of the gaps.
Yeah, for sure.
There's no like wasted time.
Yeah, it leaves you a lot of clues that come back when they solve the case. I'm curious to like see once we get to the episodes that Chris Boucher didn't write, is Star Cops going to be like this?
Yeah, that was something I wanted to mention. I'm excited to watch the rest of the season to see what's going to happen. If the Chris Boucher episodes will even continue to be like this themselves, or if this is just like the start of the season kind of thing. What's going to happen when the directors change mid-season, because that could completely change it as well. Yeah,
and I've read that does change the show noticeably when Graham Harper starts directing.
So I mean, I'm very keen for the next 7 weeks to see where the show's going to go. It's hooked me. It's got me.
Episode 3 has a lot of interesting stuff going on, I would say.
Well, that's good to hear. The names for all these episodes are like pretty interesting too. Like this one, Conversations with the Dead.
Yeah, what does that mean? Maybe it's because we're hearing like the conversations between the two lovers who are like probably going to die out there.
I think that's it, actually. Yeah. Like, because David describes him as dead, and then that's when Nathan's like, who's investigating? Like, oh, the guy, them. Nathan's like, what? And then David has to explain the whole thing, like, yeah, they're going to run out of oxygen and die, but they can still figure out what happened before they die, kind of thing.
Yeah. Or maybe it's like Nathan going to Lee's grave, possibly talking to it. A lot of people talk to graves.
Possibly.
We don't see that, but maybe. But yeah, I mean, if you don't have anything else to say, maybe we can move on to the which of Britain's 10 actors are in this segment.
Right.
I know you had a couple.
Yeah, I actually went digging this week. The first one I looked at was Trevor Cooper, and the reason why I did that is because when I saw him on screen, I'm like, damn, I'm sure I recognize this guy from somewhere.
Yeah.
I was like, I know this guy from somewhere. Went into IMDb. He's actually been in like a lot of stuff. What I found out also is that he actually studied law, and he has a master's degree in law before he became an actor. And he was like a professor for like 2 years at a college in London, or England, I mean, before he went into acting, which I thought was pretty interesting.
It's weird. I wonder how many people who like study law go into acting.
Anyway, he was in Doctor Who, in both the classic and the reboot.
Yeah.
In the classic show, he was in Revelation of the Daleks as Takis.
Yeah, I do not remember who Takis
I had to go look up what he looks like, and I'm like, oh yeah, Takis. Then he was Friar Tuck in Robot of Sherwood.
Yeah, that was the bigger one to me. It's like, whoa.
I was like, oh, that must be where I recognize him from. Like, I can kind of see it now.
Yeah, he's still acting.
Right. He's been in Downton Abbey.
Yep.
Midsummer Murders. A whole bunch of other stuff I didn't recognize.
Yeah, he was in. I wrote down. I don't know any of these shows. I just wrote them down because they were long running shows. Children's Ward. He was on The Bill, which is like a cop show. He was multiple roles in that, because that's like a very long-running show. And surprisingly, he has a recurring role in the Caldor City series.
Yes, I meant to write that down somewhere and I didn't.
He plays a character called Stenton Fatso Rowe.
Great. Thanks, Chris. And then I made a note, like, is this our first, like, explicit connection to Doctor Who besides Chris Boucher?
No, there was... I know I wrote someone down from the first one. Let me try and go back to my notes from the first one, because I know we had a Doctor Who actor. Shoot. Oh, right. I didn't do the actor. I didn't write the actors on my phone. I just did them on the Google Doc, which I don't use the Google Doc on my phone, stupidly, but...
Oh, well, let me check here then. Moray Watson was in Doctor Who.
Right.
He was in Black Orchid.
Yeah.
You're right.
But this is a bigger connection.
Yes. This is way bigger. And then I looked up some Jenny Nevinson, who played Lee Jones. She was in the movie Babe, which I've watched when I was a kid.
Is that the one with the pig?
Yeah, the one with the pig who befriends the spider.
Yeah. Wait, is that Babe or Charlotte's Web?
Oh, wait, that might be Charlotte's Web.
I think Babe is another one with a pig.
You're right, but I have seen Babe. But I don't remember it because I was like 7.
Yeah.
And she was in a long-running TV show called Muriel's Wedding, and yeah.
Yeah, she's actually Australian. She was in a lot of Australian shows that I've never heard of. But she actually had acted with David Calder before. She was in a show called The Professionals, and she was in another show called Minder with David Calder.
Nice. That was all I had. I know you had a little more.
Yeah, we had, I don't know how to pronounce her name. It's spelled S-I-A-N. It's probably one of those Irish names that's not pronounced.
Like Siobhan?
Yeah.
Have you ever seen how Siobhan is spelled?
Yeah, there's like 20 million consonants.
It's S-I-O-B-H-A-N.
Oh, man. Okay, so Very Pete Lambert on Twitter.
Okay.
This is from our Doctor Who podcast, Trust Your Doctor, check that out. Confirmed that Turlough is a real name. It's an Irish name. And the correct spelling of that name is something along the lines of Troidelbach. So it looks like Troidelbach, but it's pronounced Turlough.
You should have brought this up on Trust Your Doctor, where it would have been more relevant.
I forgot. But yeah, we have... I don't want to mispronounce their names. Cheyenne, whatever.
Maybe it's Sean, I don't know.
Sean Weber. Sean is a female name. She played Corman. She was in Highlander.
Oh yeah, the TV show. I did see that, actually.
Yeah. She was also in The Bill as multiple roles, and she was in EastEnders.
I feel like most British actors have been in EastEnders. That thing's been running for like 50 years at this point.
Yeah.
Continuously, like 5 episodes a week kind of thing.
I think she was on it until recently. Like, that's a 2010s credit for her, I believe. And then we have Alan Downer, who played Patton. He has a very extensive career, surprisingly. He started acting in the 60s. He's on a lot of famous British shows like Coronation Street, Zed Cars, Softly Softly. Yeah. He was in a show called Out of the Unknown, which, as far as I know, is like a British version of The Twilight Show.
The Twilight Zone.
The Twilight Show.
Twilight Show. Based on Stephanie Meyer's best-selling books.
Oh, God. He was on Yes, Prime Minister, which is a sequel to Yes, Minister.
Great.
Which is, I believe that's the show that inspired Veep, whose name I'm forgetting.
Geez.
And he died in 1995, actually.
Bummer.
And that's all I had.
Yeah, that's all I got.
So quite a few people with a lot of big credits, both before Star Cops and after.
Right.
Which I guess that takes us into our quotes segment.
I've got 2 quotes, both from the first 10 minutes of the episode.
Right.
My first one is, don't ever offer help to an embarrassed authority figure. It's a fast way to get kicked. Nathan says that when David's like, do you need help getting out of bed? And then this one I thought was just clever. Nathan's flailing around and David says something like, falling is easier with something in your stomach. He's like, oh, Nathan, you should eat. Falling is easier with something in your stomach. And Nathan just quips back, a sword, preferably.
Yeah, a lot of witty Chris Boucher dialogue. Some of it, I like a lot of Chris Boucher's dialogue, but some of it feels like, all right, this is a little too snappy. No one would actually be able to come up with these things.
A little too Stephen Moffat here.
Yeah, well, I also had a quote from that beginning scene where Nathan and David are talking. Nathan says, Nausea is not a recognized symptom of midlife crisis. Other people's might make you sick, but not your own.
Well, in terms of Chris Boucher's movie references, unless you have more quotes.
No, I
just
don't.
that one.
No.
I didn't actually catch any this week. And David didn't drop any weird ones.
I caught Boston.
You caught a reference? No, that's terrible.
There's a Sherlock Holmes quote, which is the
right.
it's the famous
when
one.
When you've eliminated the impossible, whatever remains must be the truth.
Right. Which I'm sure was used in some movie adaptation.
I'm actually 90% sure that's from. That was like created for the movies because I don't remember reading that quote when I read the books.
Huh.
Just like the elementary My Dear Watson, like that never appears in the Sherlock Holmes books.
Huh.
That's I think was created by the TV show adaptation. Like
Which
the one
one?
in the like 60s, I think.
Yeah.
And I'm like almost certain that one was like popularized by a movie. But you know what? I don't actually know for sure.
The Anorak Zone website actually has a couple more. Let me see if I can find a couple of those. It just has the quotes. It doesn't have what they're from. It says they're famous, but I don't know. It says "The ready when you are, Mr. DeMille" is uttered by Mike, one of the crew of the Daedalus. I don't know what that's from.
Neither do I.
And then they mentioned some Blade Runner influence in some of the designs, which I didn't notice because I never watched Blade Runner.
Oh, you're missing out. Blade Runner is seminal classic science fiction.
Yeah, gotta watch it at some point.
And it's actually better than the book. I've
read the book. The book is amazing, as most of Philip K. Dick's books are.
Yeah. I think I like the direction the movie took the idea better, though.
They start with the same idea, I've heard, and they just go completely different places with it.
About 50% of the way through. In the book, Rick Deckard goes to he goes to that precinct and everybody there is like a replicant or is implied to be a replicant.
He thinks.
That's about the point in the movie where it diverges.
Huh. I love the paranoia that's rampant through all of Philip K. Dick's books, probably because he was paranoid himself. And A Scanner Darkly is my recommendation. That's like the paranoia cranked up to 11, it's about a cop who's also a drug dealer who's assigned to investigate himself. And it takes place in Orange County.
Like Philip K. Dick's books.
Philip K.D.
Philip K.D. He's a interesting guy. The book version of Man in the High Castle is fascinating. It's like completely different from the TV show, but it's fascinating. But in the book, there's a book within a book that like refers to our reality, but like it's not the same. It's like slightly different, and it's like how deep does this go? And like in the book, a lot of characters make the decisions based on this thing called like the I Ching, I think it is.
I Ching, this ancient Chinese thing.
Yeah, the ancient Chinese thing, and like a lot of characters make the decisions based on that. And apparently, Philip K. Dick like used a real version of the I Ching to help write the book, basically.
Yeah, there are a lot of wild stories about Philip K. Dick, like the one where he had I guess back in the day in Southern California, drugstores did house deliveries, so he had some prescription meds dropped off at his house.
Great.
He's like, when I opened the door and saw the person delivering the drugs, that's when I realized I was a reincarnation of Jesus or something like that. And then this theorist/writer named Harlan Ellison asked him to like write, I forget what the request was, but it was like write a really satisfying short story. He wrote this thing about like this cannibal baby who's like trapped in a zoo, or like it's a human, but it's in a zoo, and it's also like a reincarnation of some god. I'll try and find it. It's like 3 lines, and it's really fascinating.
He's a fascinating guy. Really is. His stories are fascinating as well.
But I mean, yeah, that's all I had for this episode of Star Cops.
That's all I've got for this episode of Star Cops. I wonder how much Philip K. Dick influence there is on this show. Probably not a lot.
Probably not a lot, no.
Well, if you would like to email us, you can reach us at thedoctor@decorativevegetable.com. Questions, comments, concerns, angry rants, love letters, your thoughts on Conversations with the Dead. Forgot the name of the episode for a second there. Find us on YouTube at Decorative Vegetable. You can find us on Apple Podcasts, Google Play, and Spotify, all at Inevitable, a sci-fi podcast. Leave a rating if you like the show.
Check us out on Facebook, Trust Your Doctor. Like us on Facebook. Also check us out on Twitter at TYD Podcast and follow us on Twitter. Next time we're watching Intelligent Listening for Beginners. But until then, the end.